Marcus's eyes opened to a face in the mirror that looked familiar, but had no name. The ID card in his hand read, NeuroTech Industries, Level 7 Technician. But why did he dream of the same woman every night? And why was she always crying? He stood up in the gray-walled bedroom. His morning routine started automatically, as if his body knew what to do, but his mind was following behind. Shower, shave, standard NeuroTech uniform. Everything was mechanical, no emotional connection. The man he saw in the mirror was around 32, short brown hair, with a small scar under his chin. But how had he gotten that scar? He couldn't remember. Actually, he couldn't remember any childhood memories at all. As he examined his ID card, one detail caught his attention. The photo on it was slightly different. The Marcus in the photo was smiling. The current Marcus couldn't remember the last time he had smiled. The apartment was standard corporate housing. Clean, efficient, soulless. Everything matched perfectly, too perfectly, like a showroom nobody actually lived in. Marcus walked to the window and looked out at Neo-Tokyo's sprawling megacity. Neon signs in corporate Japanese flickered against the perpetual twilight created by the pollution dome. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones, but couldn't name it. When Marcus arrived at the technical division on the 45th floor of NeuroTech Industries' massive skyscraper, his daily task list was waiting on his desk, as it had been every day for the past 3 years. Neural interface maintenance, synaptic calibration, memory buffer cleaning. The technical terms rolled through his mind with practiced familiarity, but something nagged at him. The knowledge felt too complete, too perfect, as if it had been implanted rather than learned. The technical floor was a maze of white corridors and glass-walled laboratories. Employees moved through the space with the same mechanical precision Marcus had noticed in himself: purposeful, efficient, but somehow hollow. They greeted each other with polite nods and regulation smiles, but there was no warmth in their interactions, no sense of genuine human connection. "Good morning, Marcus," said Jennifer Walsh, who worked at the desk adjacent to his. She was a blonde-haired, green-eyed woman in her late 20s, attractive in the standardized way that all NeuroTech employees seemed to be. Her smile was perfect, her uniform impeccable, her productivity ratings consistently in the top 10% of her division. "Morning, Jennifer," Marcus replied automatically. "Productive day ahead?" "Always," she said, her smile never wavering. "Dr. Harrison wants to see you in briefing room 7. Priority consultation on today's memory reconstruction sessions." Marcus nodded and gathered his tablet and access cards. As he walked away from Jennifer's desk, he found himself wondering about her life outside the office. Did she have friends? Hobbies? Dreams that extended beyond corporate productivity metrics? But when he tried to recall any personal conversations they'd had over the past 3 years, he came up empty. They talked about work procedures, efficiency ratings, and technical specifications, but never about anything that mattered. The thought troubled him more than it should have. Briefing Room 7 was located in the high-security section of the floor, behind multiple access points and biometric scanners. Marcus's clearance was apparently higher than he'd realized. The doors opened for him without hesitation, recognizing something in his biometric signature that he himself didn't understand. Dr. Elizabeth Harrison was waiting for him, standing with her back to the door, as she studied a massive holographic display showing brain scans and neural activity patterns. She was a tall woman in her 50s, with silver hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. Her reputation in the neural engineering field was legendary. She pioneered half the techniques NeuroTech used for memory modification. "Marcus," she said without turning around. "Right on time. I have a special assignment for you today." The holographic display showed a series of brain scans labeled Subject 7749, the same number as Marcus's apartment. That couldn't be a coincidence. "VIP client," Dr. Harrison continued, finally turning to face him. Her expression was unreadable, but there was something calculating in her eyes. "Corporate executive who's experienced significant trauma. Needs a completely clean slate." "Complete reconstruction?" Marcus asked. The term felt familiar, but carried an undercurrent of unease he couldn't explain. Total memory replacement for the past 15 years. Will preserve basic motor functions, language centers, and professional skills, but everything else goes. Personality, relationships, personal history, all of it will be rebuilt from scratch according to optimal psychological profiles. Marcus felt his stomach clench. Is that standard procedure for trauma cases? Dr. Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. Since when do you question procedure, Marcus? You've performed hundreds of these operations. Your technical expertise is precisely why you were selected for this assignment. Of course, Marcus said quickly. I was just ensuring I understood the full scope of the work. But even as he spoke, Marcus was troubled by Dr. Harrison's words. Hundreds of operations? He could remember the procedures, could visualize the technical steps with perfect clarity, but the actual memories of performing them were vague, like watching someone else's work through frosted glass. Dr. Harrison handed him a sealed file folder. The subject is already in preparation room 12. Standard pre-procedure sedation has been administered. You'll have approximately 4 hours to complete the full reconstruction before the neural pathways begin to stabilize in their new configuration. Marcus took the folder, his hands steady despite the growing unease in his chest. What kind of trauma are we treating? The kind that makes people ask inconvenient questions, Dr. Harrison said, her voice carrying a hint of warning. The subject was involved in investigating certain irregularities in corporate operations. The trauma stems from discovering information that was detrimental to their psychological well-being. Irregularities. Nothing that concerns you, Marcus. Your job is technical implementation, not policy analysis. Stay in your lane, perform your function, and maintain your excellent productivity ratings. The phrase "stay in your lane" triggered something in Marcus's mind. A flash of memory so brief he almost missed it. A different voice, warm and concerned, saying the same words but with completely different meaning. Stay in your lane, honey. This investigation is dangerous. Let someone else expose NeuroTech's crimes. The voice belonged to the woman in his dreams. Marcus blinked, and the memory was gone, leaving only the echo of emotional pain and a name he couldn't quite grasp. But the certainty remained. He had heard those words before, spoken by someone who loved him and feared for his safety. Marcus. Dr. Harrison was watching him with sharp attention. Is there a problem? No problem, he said, forcing his voice to remain steady. Just reviewing the technical requirements in my mind. Good. Begin immediately. And Marcus. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. This subject has shown some resistance to standard sedation protocols. If there are any complications during the procedure, you're to call me immediately. Do not attempt to handle irregularities on your own. What kind of complications? The kind that could be dangerous to your career, Dr. Harrison said, and possibly to your continued well-being. Marcus left the briefing room with more questions than answers. As he walked toward preparation room 12, he found himself studying the other employees in the corridor. How many of them had performed similar procedures? How many had asked questions about the ethics of completely rewriting someone's identity? And how many had simply accepted their assignments without question, like perfectly programmed machines? The corridor seemed longer than usual, lined with doors leading to preparation rooms where people's minds were systematically dismantled and rebuilt according to corporate specifications. Marcus had the unsettling realization that he was walking through a factory, not one that manufactured products, but one that manufactured people. Loyal, compliant, productive people who never asked inconvenient questions. As he reached for the door handle of preparation room 12, Marcus's reflection in the polished metal surface showed him something that made him pause. For just a moment, his eyes held an expression he didn't recognize, a spark of defiance, of questioning, of someone who was beginning to remember that asking questions wasn't just acceptable, but necessary. Someone who was starting to wake up from a 3-year dream of perfect corporate compliance. The wedding ring hidden in his apartment suddenly felt heavy on his mind, like a weight he was carrying without knowing why. And the woman in his dreams, crying, always crying, seemed less like a nightmare and more like a memory trying desperately to surface. Marcus took a deep breath and opened the door to Preparation Room 12, not knowing that he was about to meet someone whose story would shatter the careful walls NeuroTech had built around his stolen life. Preparation Room 12 was designed to be calming soft lighting that mimicked natural sunlight, walls painted in soothing earth tones, and the gentle hum of white noise generators that supposedly helped patients relax. But Marcus had always found something unsettling about these rooms, something that reminded him more of a funeral home than a medical facility. The patient was lying on the neural reconstruction table, her head surrounded by the familiar crown of quantum processors and synaptic interface cables. According to the file Dr. Harrison had given him, she was Elena Vasquez, age 43, former high school teacher turned corporate whistleblower. The trauma requiring treatment: obsessive delusions regarding non-existent family members causing severe psychological distress and anti-corporate ideation. Marcus read that line 3 times, each reading making him more uncomfortable. Non-existent family members. The phrase seemed to echo something in his own experience, but he couldn't pin down what. Elena appeared to be in the standard pre-procedure sedation state, eyes closed, breathing steady, vital signs stable. The neural crown was already in place, its sensors mapping the electrical patterns of her brain with microscopic precision. All Marcus had to do was activate the memory deletion protocols and begin the reconstruction process. It should have been routine. He'd done this hundreds of times before, according to Dr. Harrison. But as Marcus approached the control console, his hands began to shake. The neural interface display showed Elena's brain activity in real time, a three-dimensional map of thoughts and memories rendered in pulsing colors. He could see the target memories highlighted in red: 15 years of experiences marked for deletion. Family photos, birthday parties, bedtime stories, graduations, weddings, births, deaths. An entire lifetime of human connection reduced to data points waiting to be erased. Marcus activated the preliminary scan, and the system began analyzing Elena's neural patterns in detail. What he saw made him step back from the console in shock. The memories weren't naturally formed. They showed all the signs of artificial construction: too perfect, too detailed, too emotionally consistent. Someone had already performed major reconstruction work on Elena's mind, probably multiple times. The memories she was clinging to, the non-existent family members, were actually restoration artifacts, fragments of her original memories that had somehow survived previous deletion attempts. "Jesus," Marcus whispered, "what have they done to you?" At the sound of his voice, Elena's eyes snapped open. The sedation should have kept her unconscious, but her gaze was sharp and focused, filled with a desperate intelligence that cut through the pharmaceutical haze. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible through the neural interface apparatus. "Don't take them away again. They're all I have left." Marcus froze. Patients weren't supposed to be conscious during the procedure. The sedation protocols were specifically designed to prevent awareness and potential psychological trauma from witnessing their own mind being dismantled. "You're awake," he said, stating the obvious because he couldn't think of anything else to say. "They can't keep me under anymore," Elena said, tears streaming down her face. "My brain has developed resistance to the sedatives. I've been through this too many times." "Too many times?" "This is my 4th reconstruction. Every time I start to remember, they bring me back here and erase me again. But the memories keep coming back, stronger each time. My children, I had children, Anna and David. They were 7 and 5 when NeuroTech took them." The names hit Marcus like physical blows. Anna and David, the same names from the concert ticket and restaurant receipt in his hidden box. The same names that sometimes echoed in his dreams, spoken in voices too young to belong to the crying woman who haunted his sleep. "Tell me about them," Marcus said, his finger hovering over the emergency stop button on the console. "Anna loved space stories. She wanted to be an astronaut when she grew up. David was obsessed with dinosaurs. He could name every species in the Natural History Museum. They were beautiful, brilliant children with their whole lives ahead of them." Elena's voice was growing stronger as she spoke, as if the act of remembering was physically sustaining her. I was investigating NeuroTech's government contracts, military applications of memory modification. When I got too close to the truth, they came for my family. They said it was a car accident, but I know better. I know they took my children and erased them from existence. Marcus felt the world tilting around him. Erased from existence? Birth certificates deleted, school records purged, medical files destroyed, as if they never lived at all. But I remember them. No matter how many times they wiped my mind, I remember them. The neural display showed Elena's brain fighting against the sedatives, her memory centers blazing with activity as she forced herself to remain conscious through sheer will. Marcus had never seen anything like it. It should have been physiologically impossible. I used to be a teacher, Elena continued. I taught 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary. Room 15, 2nd floor, windows facing the playground. 32 students that last year, each one special, each one loved. But according to NeuroTech's records, I never taught anywhere, never had a career, never made a difference in anyone's life. Marcus's hands were shaking as he looked at the deletion controls. One button press would erase everything Elena was fighting to preserve. Another perfect citizen would emerge from this room, compliant and productive and empty. What was your husband's name? He asked, not knowing why the question was important but sensing that it was. Michael, Elena said immediately. Michael Chen. He was a neural engineer at NeuroTech, one of the lead designers of their memory modification systems. When he found out what they were really using his work for, he tried to stop them. They said he had a breakdown, that he was suffering from work-related stress. But I know they took him too. The room went silent except for the hum of the neural equipment. Marcus stared at Elena, his mind reeling. Chen. The same surname he'd found on that hidden photograph. Michael Chen. Was he Michael? Had Marcus Torres never existed at all? What did your husband look like? Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elena's eyes focused on his face with startling intensity. Tall, brown hair, always kept short because he said it was more professional. Green eyes. A small scar under his chin from when he fell off his bike as a kid. He used to joke that it gave him character. Marcus touched the scar under his own chin, the one he couldn't remember getting. His reflection in the polished surface of the neural equipment showed him a man with brown hair, green eyes, and professional bearing. Oh my God! Elena breathed. Michael? Michael, is that you? The neural alarms began blaring as Elena's emotional response spiked beyond safe parameters. Her brain activity was off the charts, memories cascading through her consciousness faster than the monitoring equipment could track. I don't know, Marcus said, backing away from the console. I don't know who I am. You're my husband, Elena said, struggling against her restraints. You're the father of my children. You're the man who tried to save us all from this corporate nightmare. At that moment, the door burst open and Dr. Harrison strode in, flanked by 2 security guards in full tactical gear. Step away from the patient, Marcus, she said, her voice deadly calm. We have a situation that requires immediate containment. She says I'm her husband, Marcus said, not moving from his position between Elena and the neural console. She's delusional. The trauma has created false memories, phantom relationships with people who never existed. It's a common side effect of incomplete memory reconstruction. But the names, the details, are the result of data contamination. Sometimes fragments from other patients' memories leak into the reconstruction matrix. It's regrettable, but not unprecedented. Dr. Harrison gestured to the security guards, who began moving toward the neural table. Complete the procedure, Marcus. End this woman's suffering. What if she's telling the truth? Marcus asked. What if her memories are real? Then you're asking me to admit that NeuroTech has been systematically destroying innocent lives for profit, Dr. Harrison said. And that, Mr. Torres, would be a very dangerous thing to suggest. The emphasis on his assumed name felt like a threat. Marcus looked at Elena, who was staring at him with desperate hope, then at Dr. Harrison, whose cold eyes promised consequences for any deviation from corporate policy.
Michael, Elena whispered.
Remember who you are. Remember what we promised each other. And suddenly, Marcus did remember. Not everything, but enough. A wedding day in a small church outside the city. A promise to love and protect each other no matter what. 2 children running through a backyard he'd forgotten he'd ever owned. A life that had been stolen from him so thoroughly that even his own name had been erased. His name was Michael Chen. He was a husband and father. And he was about to make the most important decision of his stolen life. Marcus reached for the neural console, his hand moving toward the controls that would determine Elena's fate. Dr. Harrison smiled, believing she had won. The security guards relaxed slightly, assuming compliance. Instead of pressing the deletion button, Marcus slammed his fist down on the emergency shutdown control. The neural equipment powered down with a cascade of warning alarms, and Elena's restraints automatically released as safety protocols engaged. Security breach, Dr. Harrison barked into her communicator. Preparation room 12. Immediate containment required. But Marcus was already helping Elena off the table. Her legs shaky from the sedatives, but her mind clear and focused. "Can you run?" he asked. "With you? Anywhere," she replied. Hand in hand, they ran from the room that had been designed to steal their memories, leaving behind the sterile corporate world that had tried to erase their very existence. Behind them, alarms blared and security teams mobilized, but ahead lay the possibility of truth, justice, and the recovery of everything that had been taken from them. The neural ghost named Marcus Torres was dying, and in his place, Michael Chen was being reborn. Dr. Harrison's cold demeanor cracked for just a moment. "Damn it, Marcus, finish the procedure. I'll handle this." As Dr. Harrison rushed out, Marcus looked at the woman on the table. "What's your name?"
Elena Vasquez.
"I used to be a teacher before they took everything from me." Marcus hesitated. Something about her name triggered a flash. A classroom, children laughing. A woman with kind eyes teaching them about the stars. But the image was gone as quickly as it came. "Your children," Marcus said. "Tell me about them." "Anna and David." Anna was 7, David was 5. They loved space stories. I used to tell them about the old days before the corporations controlled everything. Before people started disappearing. Another flash. 2 small faces looking up at him. A bedtime story about rocket ships and distant worlds. But that couldn't be right. He didn't have children, did he? The corridors of NeuroTech Industries had transformed from sterile corporate efficiency into a maze of flashing emergency lights and blaring alarms. Security teams poured from every elevator, their tactical gear gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lighting as they swept through the building in coordinated search patterns. Michael, he was trying to think of himself as Michael now, though the name still felt foreign, guided Elena through a maintenance access he'd somehow known would be there. His corporate access card still worked, but he knew it was only a matter of time before Dr. Harrison thought to disable it. "This way," he said, leading Elena down a service corridor that ran parallel to the main hallways. The space was cramped and filled with the building's mechanical systems, air recyclers, power conduits, and data cables that carried the neural traffic of the corporation's daily operations. Elena was struggling to keep up, the residual effects of the sedatives making her movements clumsy and uncertain. But her mind was sharp, her memories flowing back with increasing clarity as the pharmaceutical fog lifted. "I remember this corridor," she said as they paused at a junction. "When I was investigating neurotech, I mapped the building's infrastructure. There's a secure elevator at the end of this section that goes directly to the subbasement levels." "How do you know that?" "Because that's where they keep the evidence. The real records, the original memory files, the documentation of everyone they've ever erased. If we can get there, we can prove what they've done," Michael finished. The idea felt dangerous and necessary in equal measure. They reached the secure elevator, its biometric scanner glowing softly in the dim light of the service corridor. Michael pressed his hand to the scanner, half expecting rejection, but the door slid open with a soft chime. "Level 7 clearance," Elena observed. "You must have been very important to them." "I designed their systems," Michael said as they descended toward the building's hidden depths. "I created the technology they're using to destroy people's lives." You also built in ways to stop them. I have to believe that. The Michael I married wouldn't have created something like this without planning for its destruction. The elevator descended past floors that didn't appear on any public building directory. Sub-basement levels that existed in the architectural plans but were officially designated as utility and storage spaces. The deeper they went, the more the building's corporate facade fell away, revealing the true nature of NeuroTech's operations. Level B-15 was their destination, according to Elena's research. The memory archive, where every stolen consciousness was cataloged and stored like books in some vast, horrible library. When the elevator doors opened, they stepped into a world that belonged more to science fiction than corporate reality. The walls were lined with organic-looking neural networks, biosynthetic tissues that pulsed with electrical activity. The air itself seemed to shimmer with data streams, quantum information flows that carried the compressed essence of human experience. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered, "and absolutely terrifying." Michael felt a strange sense of recognition as they walked deeper into the archive. His fingers moved automatically to access panels and navigation interfaces, muscle memory guiding him through security protocols he didn't consciously remember creating. "I've been here before," he said. "Many times. This was my laboratory." The central archive chamber was massive, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. Crystalline storage matrices rose like towers, each one containing thousands of compressed human memories. Life experiences, relationships, dreams, and fears, all reduced to data patterns and filed away like corporate assets. "How many people?" Elena asked, staring at the vast array of memory banks. "Hundreds of thousands," Michael said, the number emerging from some buried part of his consciousness.
Millions.
NeuroTech has been doing this for over a decade, starting small with voluntary trauma patients and gradually expanding to include anyone who posed a threat to corporate interests. They moved deeper into the chamber, following pathways between the memory banks that led toward a central control complex. Michael's access codes opened every door, his biometric signature recognized by systems that remembered him even though he couldn't remember them. There, Elena pointed toward a section of the archive that glowed differently from the rest. Family units. They keep related memories together to prevent data corruption. The family section was organized alphabetically, each storage unit labeled with surnames and dates. Michael found the Chen family archive with growing dread, knowing what he would find there but needing to see it for himself. The storage unit contained 4 individual memory matrices: Michael Chen, Elena Chen, Anna Chen, and David Chen, complete life histories, extracted and preserved with technological precision. Birth to deletion, every moment cataloged and indexed. "They're all here," Elena breathed. "Every memory we ever made together." Michael activated one of the viewing interfaces, and suddenly the air around them filled with holographic images. Their wedding day, rendered in perfect 3-dimensional detail. Elena in her white dress, Michael in his best suit, both of them young and hopeful and blissfully unaware of what the future would bring. "We were so happy," Elena said, tears streaming down her face as she watched their younger selves exchange vows. The images shifted, showing other memories. Anna's first steps across their living room floor. David's 5th birthday party, chocolate cake smeared across his grinning face. Family vacations, quiet Sunday mornings, the 1,000 small moments that make up a life of love. "They took everything," Michael said, his voice thick with rage and grief. "Not just our present, but our past. They stole our entire history." "But they kept it," Elena said, studying the storage interface. "Why would they preserve the memories if they wanted to destroy us?" Michael was wondering the same thing when he noticed something odd about the memory files. They weren't just stored, they were actively being processed, analyzed, and cross-referenced with other data in the system. "They're using our memories," he realized. "All of these stolen experiences, they're not just archived, they're being mined for data. Emotional patterns, behavioral models, psychological profiles. For what? To create better artificial personalities. They're not just erasing people, they're using the stolen memories to build more convincing replacement identities." Every family they destroy makes their next reconstruction more realistic. The scope of NeuroTech's crimes was staggering. They weren't just stealing individual lives. They were harvesting human experience itself, using love and loss and joy and pain as raw materials for their corporate machine. "We have to stop them," Elena said. "We have to expose this to the world. First, we need to get out of here alive," Michael said. "And then we need to find others like us. People who've survived the reconstruction process, who remember enough to fight back." As they prepared to download their family's memory files, alarms began blaring throughout the archive chamber. Security doors slammed shut, trapping them among the stolen memories of countless victims. Dr. Harrison's voice echoed through hidden speakers. "Michael Chen, I should have known you'd eventually find your way back here. You always were too clever for your own good. You can't hide this forever," Michael called out, continuing to work at the download interface. "People will find out what you've done. People will believe what we tell them to believe. That's the beauty of our technology. We don't just control the present, we control the past. History belongs to whoever has the power to rewrite it." The memory download was almost complete when the first security drones emerged from hidden panels in the walls. Sleek, spider-like machines armed with neural disruptors, weapons designed to cause temporary brain damage that would make their targets more compliant. "Can you run?" Michael asked Elena. "With our children's memories in my hands? I can do anything," she replied, clutching the storage device that contained their family's stolen past. They ran through the maze of memory banks as the drones pursued them, their mechanical legs skittering across the organic walls like metallic insects. Michael's corporate knowledge was coming back in fragments, muscle memory guiding him toward emergency exits and service tunnels he'd forgotten he'd helped design. Behind them, the archive chamber filled with the whine of neural disruptors and the electronic chatter of hunting machines. But ahead lay freedom, and the chance to rebuild not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone NeuroTech had tried to erase. The revolution would begin with memory, and memory would set them free. The service tunnels beneath Neo-Tokyo were a forgotten world, a maze of maintenance corridors and abandoned infrastructure that stretched for kilometers beneath the corporate towers. Steam from the city's geothermal plants filled the air with humid warmth, while bioluminescent fungi that had adapted to the artificial environment provided patches of eerie blue-green light. Michael and Elena moved through the subterranean landscape like ghosts, the stolen memory device clutched tightly in Elena's hands. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit had faded as NeuroTech's security forces lost their trail in the labyrinthine tunnel system. "How do you know about this place?" Michael asked as Elena led them confidently through intersections and down corridors that all looked identical to him. "I spent months down here during my investigation," Elena replied, "before they caught me the first time. There's a whole community of people living in these tunnels, refugees from the corporate world above. People who've been erased, displaced, or simply refused to participate in the system. They walked for what felt like hours, occasionally passing evidence of human habitation. Makeshift shelters built from salvaged materials, hydroponic gardens growing under artificial lights, workshops where people repaired and modified technology scavenged from the surface world. The undergrowth," Elena explained, using what was apparently the local term for this hidden civilization. "Most of the residents are neural ghosts, people who've survived partial memory wipes or escaped before the process could be completed. They've created their own society down here, free from corporate surveillance and control." The idea of an entire underground civilization was staggering. Michael tried to imagine how many people had been driven to this extreme, forced to abandon their surface lives and retreat into the tunnels like some kind of technological cave dwellers. They reached a massive chamber that had clearly been carved out of the bedrock decades ago, probably during the construction of the city's foundation systems. The space had been transformed into a bustling community center, with living areas, workshops, and what appeared to be a sophisticated computer laboratory arranged around a central gathering space. Dozens of people moved through the chamber, all bearing the telltale signs of neural modification, surgical scars, behavioral tics, occasional moments of vacant confusion as damaged memories tried to surface. But despite their trauma, there was a sense of purpose and community that Michael found deeply moving.
Elena,
A young woman with purple hair and extensive cybernetic implants rushed toward them. "We thought NeuroTech had gotten you for good this time." "They tried, Zero," Elena replied, embracing the woman. "But I had help." She gestured toward Michael. "This is Michael Chen. He's starting to remember who he is." Zero's eyes widened as she looked at Michael more closely. "Holy shit, you're the architect. We've been looking for you for 3 years." "The architect? You designed most of NeuroTech's neural modification systems," Zero explained, leading them toward the computer laboratory. "But you also built backdoors into everything, hidden pathways and override codes that could be used to reverse the damage. When you disappeared, we thought we'd lost our best chance at fighting back." The laboratory was impressive, filled with salvaged and modified equipment that wouldn't have looked out of place in NeuroTech's own facilities. Multiple holographic displays showed brain scans, memory patterns, and what appeared to be reconstruction algorithms running in real time. "Welcome to the Neural Liberation Front," Zero said with pride. "Population. Everyone who refuses to let the corporations steal their minds." An older man with graying hair and kind eyes approached them. Despite the underground setting, he moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. "Michael?" the man said, his voice filled with emotion. "Is it really you?" Michael stared at the man, feeling the familiar frustration of almost recognition. The face was definitely familiar, but the name and context remained elusive. "I'm sorry," Michael said. "I don't remember you." "David Kim," the man said, extending his hand. "I was your research partner at NeuroTech. We worked together on the original memory modification protocols, back when we thought we were creating something that would help people heal from trauma." The name triggered a cascade of partial memories. Late nights in the laboratory, heated discussions about the ethics of memory modification, growing horror as they realized what their corporate masters intended to do with their research. "David," Michael said, the name feeling right on his tongue. "You tried to warn me about Harrison's real plans, and you tried to expose them," David replied. "When NeuroTech realized you were gathering evidence against them, they decided to make you disappear. Complete memory reconstruction, new identity, new life. They turned their own chief architect into a compliant technician." "But something went wrong," Zero added, pulling up holographic displays that showed brain scan data. "Your neural patterns were too complex to completely rewrite. The reconstruction process left gaps, inconsistencies. That's why you started having dreams, finding hidden objects, questioning your artificial life." Michael looked at the brain scans, seeing his own neural patterns rendered in three-dimensional detail. Even to his trained eye, the modifications were obvious artificial neural pathways overlaid on natural ones, memory blocks that showed clear signs of external construction. "How many others?" he asked. "How many people have they done this to?" "Thousands," David said grimly. "Maybe tens of thousands. Anyone who posed a threat to corporate interests, anyone who asked inconvenient questions, anyone who simply knew too much. They've been perfecting the process for over a decade." Elena stepped forward, holding up the memory device they'd stolen from the archive. "We have proof, complete documentation of their crimes, stored in their own systems." Zero's eyes lit up as she examined the device. "This is incredible. Memory files, reconstruction protocols, target lists. With this data, we could expose everything. Or we could do something better," Michael said, an idea forming in his mind. "We could reverse it, use their own systems against them, restore the stolen memories to their rightful owners." "That's impossible," David said. "The neural pathways have been too damaged. You can't just pour memories back into a reconstructed brain." "Not individually," Michael agreed. "But what if we created a distributed consciousness network? Instead of trying to restore complete personalities, we could share the memories across multiple minds. The victims' experiences would live on in the community that's fighting to expose the truth." Zero was already working at the computer interfaces, her hands flying over holographic controls as she began analyzing the stolen data. "It's theoretically possible. We'd need to modify the existing neural link technology, create a way for multiple minds to share memory fragments without causing psychological damage. How long would it take? Elena asked. Weeks, maybe months, Zero replied. But Michael's right, it could work. We could create a living archive of everything NeuroTech has stolen, preserved in the minds of people who understand its value. As they worked through the technical details, more members of the underground community gathered around them. Each person had their own story of loss and survival, their own reasons for fighting against the corporate machine that had tried to erase them. There was Maria Santos, a former journalist whose investigation into government corruption had ended with her being declared mentally incompetent and subjected to therapeutic memory modification. Thomas Wright, a software engineer who had discovered backdoors in voting systems and been labeled a terrorist threat. Sarah Chen, no relation to Michael despite the shared surname. A doctor who had tried to report illegal human experimentation and found herself subjected to the same procedures she'd been documenting. We're all neural ghosts, Sarah explained to Michael. People who officially no longer exist, whose lives have been erased from the record. But we remember enough to know what was taken from us. And now we fight back, Maria added. Every day we help more people escape the corporate reconstruction process. We spread the truth about what's happening, even though most people refuse to believe it. The surface world is too comfortable with the illusion of safety, Thomas said bitterly. They'd rather believe that the disappeared people never existed than face the reality that they could be next. Michael felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. These people had been living in exile for years, fighting a war that the surface world didn't even know was happening. And now they were looking to him for leadership, for the technical expertise that could turn their resistance into a revolution. There's something else, Elena said quietly. The memory device contains more than just personal records. It has financial data, communication logs, government contracts, evidence of how deep this conspiracy goes. Zero pulled up the relevant files, and the holographic displays filled with damning evidence. NeuroTech's memory modification technology wasn't just being used for corporate security, it was being deployed against political dissidents, investigative journalists, and whistleblowers. The company had contracts with multiple governments, law enforcement agencies, and military organizations. They're not just stealing individual lives, Michael realized. They're rewriting history itself. Anyone who threatens the established order gets erased, their stories deleted from the collective memory of humanity. But now we have proof, David said. With this evidence, we can expose everything. Show the world what's really happening. The world won't believe us, Sarah said pragmatically. NeuroTech controls too much of the media, has too many powerful allies. They'll discredit the evidence, claim it's fabricated by terrorist organizations or foreign enemies. Then we don't try to convince the world, Michael said. We make it impossible for them to ignore us. We use their own technology to restore the stolen memories, give voice to the victims they tried to silence. A neural resurrection, Zero breathed, bringing the dead back to digital life. More than that, Elena said, understanding dawning in her eyes. We become them. Every person in this community carries the memories of the victims. We become living testimony to their crimes. The idea was audacious and deeply personal. Michael would carry the memories of every family NeuroTech had destroyed, every individual they had erased. The resistance fighters would become a collective consciousness, a distributed soul that preserved the experiences of those who had been deemed inconvenient by corporate power. It's dangerous, David warned. Sharing memories at that scale could cause psychological fractures, identity confusion, permanent neural damage. And leaving them buried in NeuroTech's archives is somehow safer? Maria asked. At least this way they live on. Their stories get told. As the debate continued, Michael found himself thinking about Anna and David, the children whose memories he'd seen in the holographic display. They had been 7 and 5 when they were erased, their young lives cut short by corporate calculation. If the Neural Resurrection Project succeeded, they would live on in the minds of the people fighting to prevent other families from suffering the same fate. It wasn't the same as bringing them back to life, but it was something, a form of immortality that NeuroTech had never intended to create. We'll need volunteers, Michael said finally, people willing to carry the memories of the dead, to become vessels for their experiences. You'll have them, Zero said immediately. Everyone here has lost someone to NeuroTech. We'd be honored to give them a chance to speak again. Then we begin immediately, Michael decided. David, I'll need you to help me reconstruct the memory integration protocols. Zero, start preparing the neural link hardware. Elena, I'll coordinate with the other resistance cells, Elena said. Let them know that the Ghost War is about to become very real. As the underground laboratory filled with purposeful activity, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 years. Hope, not the artificial contentment that NeuroTech had programmed into him, but real hope based on love, loss, and the determination to ensure that neither would be forgotten. The neural ghosts were about to become an army, and their weapon would be memory itself. 3 weeks had passed since Michael and Elena's escape from NeuroTech, and the underground laboratory had transformed into something resembling a neural engineering facility. Salvaged equipment lined the walls, holographic displays showed complex brain mapping algorithms, and the air hummed with the constant activity of modified computers processing vast amounts of stolen memory data. Michael had thrown himself into the work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every waking moment was spent refining the neural integration protocols, testing memory compatibility algorithms, and designing the distributed consciousness network that would allow the underground community to carry the memories of NeuroTech as victims. You need to sleep, Elena said, finding him hunched over a workstation at 3 in the morning. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands shook slightly from too much caffeine and too little rest. I can't, Michael replied without looking up from his work. Every hour we delay is another hour that their memories stay buried. Anna and David are in there, Elena. Our children are trapped in that digital prison, and I'm the only one who understands the technology well enough to free them. Elena pulled up a chair beside him, studying the holographic display that showed the neural pattern mapping for their family's memory files. Anna's consciousness appeared as a swirling galaxy of warm colors, curiosity and joy, and endless questions about the world around her. David's pattern was more structured, organized around the systematic cataloging of information that had made him such a gifted student even at age 5. They're not suffering, Elena said gently. In the archive, they're not aware of being trapped. They're just waiting for us to bring them home, Michael said. Even if home is just the shared consciousness of people who never knew them but are willing to love them anyway. The technical challenges were staggering. Human memory wasn't designed to accommodate foreign experiences, especially not the complex emotional landscapes of other people's lives. The brain's neural pathways were highly specific, shaped by individual development and personal experience. Forcing incompatible memories into an existing consciousness could cause anything from mild confusion to complete psychological breakdown. But Michael had been working on solutions. Instead of trying to integrate complete personalities, he was developing a system that would break memories down into emotional and experiential components. Love, loss, joy, fear, curiosity, wonder, the fundamental building blocks of human experience that could be shared across different minds without causing identity conflicts. Show me how it works, Elena said. Michael activated a small-scale demonstration on one of the secondary displays. We start with a memory fragment, let's say Anna's first day of school. Instead of trying to transfer the complete experience, we extract the core emotional components. Her excitement about learning new things, her nervousness about meeting new people, her pride in wearing her new backpack. The display showed Anna's memory being deconstructed into abstract patterns of neural activity. Fear became a pattern of electrical impulses that corresponded to uncertainty and the need for security. Excitement translated into cascades of neurotransmitter activity associated with curiosity and exploration. Then we package these emotional essences in a format that can integrate with any compatible neural architecture, Michael continued. The person receiving the memory fragment won't experience Anna's specific memories, but they'll feel echoes of her emotions. They'll carry a piece of what it was like to be her. And when enough people carry enough fragments, Anna lives on, Michael finished, distributed across dozens of minds, but alive in the most important sense. Her capacity for joy, her love of learning, her way of seeing the world, all of it preserved and active in the people who carry her memory. Zero approached their workstation, carrying a steaming cup of coffee and looking as exhausted as Michael felt. She'd been working around the clock to modify the Neuralink hardware, adapting NeuroTech's own technology to serve their revolutionary purposes. "We're ready for the first test," she announced. David Kim volunteered to be the initial subject. "We're going to try uploading one of your memory fragments, see how well the integration protocols work." Michael looked at Elena, then at the holographic display showing their children's neural patterns. "Which memory?" "Something simple," Zero suggested. "A moment of happiness, not too emotionally complex. We need to test the basic functionality before we attempt anything more ambitious." Michael scrolled through the memory files until he found what he was looking for. A sunny afternoon in their backyard, Anna and David playing while he and Elena watched from the porch. It was a perfect moment, filled with love and contentment, but not overwhelmed by complex emotions that might destabilize an unfamiliar mind. "This one," he said, isolating the memory fragment and beginning the decomposition process. The preparation took several hours. Each element of the memory had to be carefully extracted and converted into compatible neural patterns. The sound of children's laughter became specific frequency patterns that corresponded to joy and innocence. The feeling of sunlight on skin translated into sensory data that could trigger similar pleasant associations in any human nervous system. David Kim settled into the neural interface chair with the calm demeanor of someone who had faced far worse than experimental brain surgery. The modified NeuroTech equipment looked almost organic in the underground setting, biotech cables and quantum processors adapted to serve liberation rather than oppression. "Are you sure about this?" Michael asked as he made the final preparations. "We don't know what the side effects might be. This could cause permanent neural damage." "Michael," David said with a slight smile, "I've been carrying neural damage for 3 years, ever since NeuroTech tried to erase my memory of our work together. If this experiment can help restore what they stole from all of us, then the risk is worth it." Michael activated the memory integration protocol, and the laboratory fell silent except for the hum of quantum processors and the steady beep of monitoring equipment. On the holographic displays, they could watch David's brain activity in real time as the foreign memory fragment was carefully introduced into his neural patterns. For a moment, nothing happened. Then David's eyes widened, and a smile spread across his face. "I can feel them," he whispered. "The children, I can feel their happiness." The integration was working. The memory fragment wasn't causing David to experience Michael's specific recollections, but it was allowing him to feel the emotional essence of that perfect afternoon. The joy of watching children at play, the contentment of family life, the simple pleasure of a sunny day spent with people you love. "How do you feel?" Elena asked. "Like I've been given a gift," David replied. "I don't remember Anna and David as my own children, but I can feel how much they were loved. I can carry that feeling with me, let it become part of who I am." The successful test sent a wave of excitement through the underground community. Word spread quickly through the tunnels, and soon volunteers were lining up to participate in the Neural Resurrection Project. People who had lost their own families to NeuroTech as crimes wanted to carry the memories of other victims, creating a vast network of shared experience and preserved love. Over the following days, the process was refined and expanded. Memory fragments from dozens of victims were extracted from the stolen archives and prepared for integration. The underground laboratory became a center of continuous activity as people took turns in the neural interface chairs, receiving pieces of lives that had been erased from official existence. Maria Santos carried the memory of a journalist who had been investigating government corruption before being declared mentally incompetent. The memory fragment didn't give her access to the journalist's specific discoveries, but it filled her with an unshakable commitment to truth-telling that strengthened her own investigative instincts. Thomas Wright received fragments from 3 different software engineers who had discovered security vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure systems. The memories reinforced his natural paranoia about digital surveillance while giving him new insights into the ways technology could be used for oppression. Sarah Chen carried memories from dozens of medical professionals who had tried to expose illegal human experimentation. The accumulated weight of their ethical convictions made her even more determined to use her skills in service of healing rather than harm. But it was Elena who volunteered for the most ambitious integration yet. Complete memory fragments from Anna and David, their own children's consciousness preserved and distributed across her mind. "It's too dangerous," Michael protested as Elena settled into the neural interface chair. "The emotional intensity could cause psychological fractures. You could lose your own identity in the process." "They're my children," Elena said simply. "I've already lost them once. I'm not going to abandon them again." The integration process took hours, carefully introducing fragments of Anna and David's consciousness into Elena's neural patterns. Michael monitored every step, ready to abort the procedure if Elena showed signs of psychological distress. Instead, as the memories took hold, Elena began to glow with an inner radiance that had nothing to do with the laboratory's artificial lighting. Her face softened, taking on expressions that Michael recognized from their children. Anna's look of intense concentration when she was learning something new. David's quiet smile when he was content with the world. "They're here," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "They're really here. I can feel them growing up inside my mind, experiencing the world through my senses." It wasn't the same as having their children back, but it was something miraculous nonetheless. Anna and David lived on in Elena's consciousness, their personalities distributed across her neural networks like beloved guests who had come home after a long journey. "Can you feel them separately?" Michael asked. "Are they distinct, or do they blend together?" "They're themselves," Elena said with wonder. "Anna is asking questions about everything she sees through my eyes. David is cataloging all the new information, building mental maps of this underground world. They're curious about their new existence, but they're not afraid. They know they're loved." The success of Elena's integration proved that the Neural Resurrection Project could work on a larger scale. Complete personalities could be preserved and shared across multiple minds, creating a form of digital immortality that NeuroTech had never intended. But with success came new dangers. As word of their achievements spread through the underground resistance networks, it reached ears that were connected to NeuroTech's security apparatus. Dr. Harrison was mobilizing corporate resources for a final assault on the underground communities. The neural ghosts had become too dangerous to ignore, and the corporation was preparing to eliminate them once and for all. The war for human memory was about to enter its final phase, and the outcome would determine whether consciousness itself could remain free in a world increasingly dominated by corporate control. Over the next several hours, Zero used a combination of neural stimulation and memory recovery techniques to help Marcus piece together his past. The process was agonizing, like trying to assemble a puzzle while the pieces kept shifting. He remembered meeting Isabella at university. She was studying journalism, he was in neural engineering. She had dreams of changing the world through truth-telling. He wanted to use technology to heal minds. Their wedding day flooded back, a small ceremony in the mountains outside the city, away from the corporate towers. Isabella in a simple white dress, her eyes bright with love and hope for the future. Anna's birth, the tiny hand gripping his finger, the overwhelming love that redefined his understanding of what it meant to be human. David's first steps, the pride and joy of watching his son discover the world. But alongside the good memories came the painful ones. Isabella's investigation into NeuroTech's government contracts. Her discovery that they were using memory modification on political dissidents. Her determination to expose the truth. The threats that followed. The attempts to discredit her work. The final confrontation with NeuroTech executives who offered them a simple choice. Stay silent or face the consequences. "I should have stopped," Marcus whispered. "I should have protected them." "You tried," Elena said. She had been listening to his story with tears in her eyes. "You tried to do the right thing. That's more than most people can say. And now they're gone." "Are they?" Zero asked. "I mean, really gone?" Marcus looked at her. "What do you mean?" "NeuroTech doesn't just delete memories. They store them. Everything they take from people, they keep in their data vaults. It's their insurance policy and their leverage." "You're saying?" "I'm saying there's a chance your family's memories still exist. hidden in NeuroTech's deepest vaults. And if we can get to them, Marcus stood up. For the first time in 3 years, he felt purpose. Not the artificial purpose NeuroTech had programmed into him, but real, burning determination. Then we get them back. Zero gathered the core team in the command center. Besides Marcus, Elena, and David Kim, there were 5 others. Jake, a former NeuroTech security officer. Maria, a neural programmer who'd escaped during a memory wipe. Tommy, a street kid who'd grown up in the tunnels. Sarah, a doctor who treated neural trauma. And Alex, a data recovery specialist. The good news, Zero said, projecting building schematics onto the main screen, is that Marcus still has his old access codes. They never bothered to change them because they didn't think he'd ever remember who he was. The bad news, Marcus asked. The memory vault is in the most secure part of the building. Sub-basement level 20. It's not just locked down, it's completely isolated. No network connections, no remote access. You have to be physically present to access the data. Jake leaned forward. Security's tight. Motion sensors, thermal detectors, neural scanners. And that's just the stuff I know about. They've probably upgraded since I left. There's more, Zero continued. The vault isn't just storage. It's also where they conduct their most sensitive experiments. Memory splicing, personality reconstruction, neural archaeology. If we're caught, they'll do worse than kill us, Sarah finished. They'll erase us so completely that we'll never have existed. Marcus looked around the room at these people who had become his new family. They were all damaged, all broken by NeuroTech's crimes. But they were also brave, determined, and willing to risk everything for a chance at justice. There's something else you should know, he said. I'm starting to remember more about my work at NeuroTech. I didn't just design their memory wiping systems, I built in backdoors. Hidden pathways that I could use to access the data if I ever needed to. Zero's eyes lit up. Backdoors they don't know about? Backdoors they can't know about. They're embedded in the quantum substrate of the neural networks. Even if they suspected, they couldn't find them without understanding the mathematical principles I used. So we can get in? We can get in. But getting out, that's another story. The plan was complex but necessary. Jake would create a diversion on the upper floors, drawing security away from the vault levels. Maria and Tommy would disable the external security sensors. Sarah would monitor their neural patterns to ensure they weren't detected by the building's bioscanners. Alex would provide technical support from the underground base. Marcus, Elena, and Zero would be the infiltration team. They entered through the same service tunnels that had brought Marcus and Elena to the underground base. The corporate building's foundation extended deep into the earth, with maintenance access points that connected to the city's infrastructure. Marcus's access codes worked perfectly, too perfectly. As they descended through level after level of security checkpoints, he began to worry that this was a trap. "It's too easy," he whispered to Zero as they paused at a junction. "Maybe," she replied, "or maybe they really are that arrogant. They erased your memories so completely that they can't imagine you'd ever be a threat again." They reached sub-basement level 15 when the first alarm sounded. Not the general evacuation alarm Marcus had heard earlier, but a specific security alert. "Jake's diversion," Elena said. "Right on schedule." They could hear boots running overhead as security teams responded to the false emergency on the upper floors. The path to the memory vault was clear. Level 20 was different from the rest of the building. The walls were organic-looking, covered in neural tissue that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The air itself seemed to hum with electrical activity. "Jesus," Zero breathed. "It's like being inside a giant brain." "That's exactly what it is," Marcus said, his suppressed memories flooding back. "The entire level is a neural network. Every memory they've ever stolen is stored in these walls." They reached the vault door, a massive circular portal that looked more like a biological sphincter than a traditional entrance. Marcus placed his hand on the bioscanner. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the walls began to contract and expand, and the door dilated open. Inside, the memory vault was beautiful and terrible. Thousands of glass containers filled with glowing neural fluid lined the walls. Each container held the extracted memories of a human being, their loves, their fears, their dreams, their pain. How do we find them? Elena asked. Marcus was already moving toward a central console. His fingers flew over the quantum interface, accessing systems he'd designed but forgotten he'd created. Search parameters. Isabella Chen, Anna Chen, David Chen, he said aloud. The system responded immediately. 3 containers began to glow brighter than the rest, their positions highlighted on the vault's holographic map. There, Marcus said, his voice breaking. There. The containers holding his family's memories were beautiful and horrifying. Each one contained a swirling galaxy of light, the essence of a human consciousness, extracted and preserved like a butterfly in amber. Marcus approached Isabella's container first. The label read, Subject 4729, Journalist, Extraction Date, 2087.15.23, Classification, Permanent Storage. How do we bring them back? He asked. Zero was examining the quantum storage systems. The memories are intact, but they're not just stored. They're compressed, encrypted, and cross-referenced with NeuroTech's psychological profiles. We can't just pour them back into someone's head. But we can reconstruct them? Maybe, if we had the right equipment, the right neural substrate. Zero paused. Marcus, you're not thinking of using your own brain as the host, are you? The thought had occurred to him. If he couldn't bring his family back to life, at least he could carry them with him. Would it work? It would kill you, or drive you insane, or both. But they'd be alive, in a way. Elena put her hand on his shoulder. That's not what they would want. Isabella wouldn't want you to destroy yourself to save her memory. Marcus knew she was right, but the temptation was overwhelming. His family was right there, within reach, after 3 years of emptiness and loss. There might be another way, Zero said slowly. The Neural Ghost Network. We've been working on distributed consciousness storage. Instead of trying to fit all these memories into one brain, we could spread them across multiple minds. Share them. Share them. Every person in our network could carry a piece of your family's memories. They'd live on in all of us. It wasn't the same as bringing them back to life, but it was something. A form of immortality that NeuroTech had never intended. Marcus was about to respond when a new alarm began blaring. This one was different, urgent, immediate, and very, very close. Vault breach detected, an automated voice announced. Initiating containment protocols. The organic walls began to pulse faster, and the neural fluid in the containers started to glow more brightly. They know we're here, Elena said. More than that, Zero replied, checking her scanner. They're activating the vault's defense systems. The entire level is about to flood with neural toxins. Marcus looked at the containers holding his family's memories, then at the 2 women who had helped him remember who he was. Download everything, he said. All of it. Every memory in this vault. That's impossible. There's too much data, and we don't have time. I designed these systems. I know their capabilities better than anyone. Marcus was already working at the console, his fingers flying over controls he'd forgotten he'd created. Every person NeuroTech has ever stolen from deserves to be remembered. Marcus, the toxins, will take 3 minutes to reach lethal concentrations. That's enough time. As Marcus worked, downloading terabytes of human consciousness into the portable storage unit Zero had brought, he felt a strange sense of peace. He might not be able to save his family, but he could save their memory, and the memories of thousands of others who had been erased by corporate greed. The neural toxins were already beginning to affect them when Marcus finished the download. His vision was blurring, and he could feel his synapses firing erratically. Got it, he said, handing the storage devices to Zero and Elena. Everything, every stolen memory in the vault. They ran for the exit as the walls around them began to secrete paralytic compounds. Marcus's legs gave out just as they reached the door. Leave me, he gasped. Take the memories and go. Like hell, Elena said, pulling his arm over her shoulder. "We're all getting out of here." Zero was on his other side, and together they half-carried, half-dragged him through the corridor. The building's security systems were in full alert mode now, but Jake's diversions had worked perfectly. The security teams were still focused on the wrong floors. They made it to the service tunnels just as Marcus's nervous system shut down completely. The neural toxins had done their work, but slowly enough that they'd escaped the vault. In the underground base, Sarah worked frantically to purge the toxins from Marcus's system, while Zero and Alex began the process of integrating the stolen memories into their distributed network. "Will he be okay?" Elena asked. "The toxins are designed to cause permanent neural damage," Sarah said. "But Marcus's brain is different. The modifications he made to himself when he was designing the memory systems seem to have given him some resistance." Modifications? He experimented on himself, used his own neural pathways as a testing ground for the technology. It's probably why he was able to start remembering even after the memory wipe. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness for 3 days. When he finally woke up, the first thing he saw was Elena's face, filled with concern and relief. "The memories?" he asked. "Safe," she said. "All of them." Zero says it's the biggest intelligence breach in corporate history. Marcus tried to sit up, but his body wasn't cooperating. "Isabella? Anna? David? They're here," Elena said softly. "Not in the way you hoped, but they're here. Every person in our network now carries a part of them. They'll never be forgotten again." Over the following weeks, as Marcus recovered from the neural toxin exposure, the Neural Liberation Front began releasing the stolen memories to the world. They didn't just dump the data. They carefully reconstructed individual stories, creating immersive experiences that allowed people to literally see the world through the eyes of NeuroTech as victims. The public reaction was explosive. Thousands of people came forward, claiming they'd also been subjected to memory modification. Families reported missing loved ones who had supposedly never existed. Corporate employees began to question their own memories, wondering if they too were victims of neural manipulation. NeuroTech's stock price collapsed. Government investigations were launched. CEO Dr. Harrison was arrested on charges of crimes against humanity. But Marcus knew the victory was temporary. NeuroTech was just one company. The technology existed, and there would always be people willing to use it for profit and control. "So what do we do now?" Elena asked during one of their planning sessions. "We fight," Marcus said. "We help people recover their stolen memories. We expose the companies that are doing this. We make sure it never happens again. A lifetime of fighting? A lifetime of remembering. For everyone who can't remember themselves." Marcus had found his purpose again. Not the artificial purpose NeuroTech had programmed into him, but something real and meaningful. He would be a guardian of memory, a protector of human consciousness in an age when both were under assault. 1 year later, the Neural Liberation Front had grown into a global movement. Memory recovery centers operated in every major city. The technology Marcus had helped develop was now being used to restore stolen memories rather than delete them. Marcus stood in the memorial hall they'd built in the underground base. The walls were covered with photographs and videos, the faces of everyone whose memories they'd recovered from NeuroTech's vaults. Isabella's picture was there, along with Anna and David. They were smiling, the way he remembered them before the corporations stole their lives. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked, joining him in front of the memorial. "Regret what?" "Not trying to bring them back. In your own mind, I mean, you could have tried to host their memories." Marcus shook his head. "They wouldn't have been them. They would have been my memories of them, filtered through my grief and guilt. This way, they live on in dozens of people, experienced through dozens of different perspectives. They're more real this way, not less." "The memory keepers," Elena said. "The memory keepers," Marcus agreed. In the distance, they could hear the sound of children playing, kids who lived in the underground tunnels, the children of neural ghosts who were building new lives away from corporate control. Their laughter echoed through the corridors, a sound of hope and resilience. Marcus closed his eyes and listened. For just a moment, He could swear he heard Anna and David's voices among them, not as ghosts or memories, but as possibilities, as the future they'd never gotten to live, but which these children might. In a world where memories could be stolen, the most revolutionary act was to remember. And Marcus Chen, no longer Marcus Torres, no longer the empty corporate technician NeuroTech had tried to create, would spend the rest of his life making sure that the human capacity for memory, love, and hope could never be deleted. The neural ghosts had become the guardians of human consciousness, and in the depths of the corporate underground, they were winning the war for the soul of humanity, one recovered memory at a time. Even in the darkest cyberpunk future, the human spirit found a way to survive, to resist, and to remember. The corporations might own the cities, the governments, and the technology, but they could never truly own the human heart. And in that truth, Marcus found his peace.